I think Deion Sanders just nailed another coaching hire.
You are Locked On Buffs, your daily podcast on the Colorado Buffaloes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Buffs. I am your host, Kevin Borba. Today's episode of Locked On Buffs is brought to you by our sponsors over at the Locked On Podcast Network. Of course, it's your team every day for free and available wherever you get your podcast. So make sure to like, subscribe, and follow so that way you don't miss out on a moment of the coverage. Let's dive into it right away. Colorado has finally found their new defense line coach, which for the most part fills out their staff, right? You lose your offense line coach, you lose your edge coach, you lose your defense line coach. And it's like, oh my goodness, who else is going to leave, right? And so Coach Prime goes back to the NFL. He gets another guy who played in the NFL and is coached in the NFL. And that's sort of been his whole MO. That's sort of been his whole goal when assembling a staff is people with NFL experience to help his players get to that next level. You have Pat Shurmur, offense coordinator, was a head coach in the NFL. Robert Livingston spent over a decade in the NFL. You have Warren Sapp, who is an all-time great. You have Marshall Faulk, all-time great running back in the NFL. So many more, right? You have so many coaches who have that NFL experience who are now in Boulder. And so he goes out, hires Domata Peko, who 40 years old, which I know that to the college kids, it's probably like a little bit old, but he's on the younger side. He's not too far removed from his NFL career, which saw him play 14 seasons, 214 games, 194 starts. He served as a defensive line assistant under Mike Zimmer with the Dallas Cowboys this past season. So he's been coaching. Zimmer is one of Coach Prime's mentors. And also, Peko has familiarity or is acquainted with Robert Livingston because obviously he spent time with the Bengals. And he's also sort of used to the Denver area, played with the Broncos in 2017, 2018. And I think maybe my favorite part of this is his son is a three-star he's a three-star recruit in California, 6'3", 310 pounds at Westlake Village Oaks Christian, which is in Southern California. 14 Power 4 offers: Miami, Michigan, UCLA. I assume Colorado's going to hop into that list if they haven't already. And so you get a guy with more NFL experience, right? And it's one of those things where it's attractive to the players, right? You want to recruit really good defense linemen. Colorado has an interesting defense line coming in this year because obviously you return guys like Torian Carter, Anquin Barnes, Amari McNeil, and then you've also added guys like Gabriel Lightfoot from Fresno State and Jaheim Otis, who is he was the number one player in the portal at one point. So you have a lot of talent in that defense line room. You lost someone in Damian Lewis, who I think activated or really got this defense line unit going this past year, right? Colorado's run defense was way better this past year than it was in 2023. I think in 2023, they either were the worst run defense in the country or one of the worst. This year, much better. Their defense line was disruptive. They got to the quarterback. They wreaked havoc all the time. And so he needs a coach who could come in, sort of help him figure out a way to keep that train rolling and also find some consistency, right? You can't be mad at all of the coaches that Coach Prime lost this year. I think for the most part, or at least most of them, like Damian Lewis played at Miami. I think it was Loadhall or Dancy. One of them had ties to Mississippi State. So it's one of those things where these guys are returning home. And so you bring a guy who's played here, has been in Denver before, maybe that helps him stay around for the long run. And obviously what we're going to really see from him, because he's inexperienced, like he's never been the guy, right? He's never been the defense line coach, at least at a Power 4 program like this. He worked with the Cowboys this past year. He was an assistant, like I said. So he's never been the guy. That being said, he's worked with a lot of similar minds to Coach Prime. He's someone who I imagine will generate a lot of excitement on the recruiting trail from recruits, because recruits, I feel like it's a weird thing. You either have to be a savant at what you do. So like Steve Sarkisian, Brendan Marion at Sac State, I think Sac State has a top 25-ish class right now, or whoever else, right? You name like a offensive-minded guru or a defensive-minded guru for that matter. And players are attracted to that because they want to play in systems where they're going to thrive, systems where it's like, okay, this is cutting edge. This is going to help me get to the NFL. Well, you either are that or you're someone who recruits respect because you played or played in the NFL or had a really good college career. And I think he kind of falls into both of those categories. So another young recruiting mind for Coach Prime. He has Southern California roots. He's an LA native, or at least a Southern California native. His son's there, so you kind of maybe get in with his son and get in with his son's teammates. And then also he has ties. He played his ball at Michigan State, so he's kind of been all over the place, some here or there. Has an understanding of what Colorado wants to do, and has an understanding of what it takes to, I think, play at the highest level for 14 years, right? I mean, it's not easy to stick around in the NFL for that long, let alone be a consistent player. He started a lot of those games. So really like the hire from Coach Prime here. I think where I would like to see, or where I'll go with what I'm most excited about, and then what I have my questions about. Most excited about, can he sort of bring a different mindset, maybe, right? This Colorado defense line was really good last year. Is there a way to up the level even more? Is there a way that he unlocks something else that maybe we weren't seeing? Maybe we see it in Anquin Barnes, who's ginormous, or maybe we see it in, I don't know, Amari McNeil, right? Maybe we see it in one of these guys where it's like all of a sudden, because he's here, a switch has been flipped, right? So that's the thing I'm most excited to, looking forward to, that and recruiting. I want to see if he maybe has an impact on the recruiting trail, or if Colorado, I guess, sees a downtick in recruiting there, because obviously he hasn't recruited before. Next, my questions, right? Does he want to be here for a long time? I think the hardest part about building a college football staff these days is everyone is looking for that next job, that better job, right? And I mean, everyone wants to be a head coach if you're a coach, or at least for the most part. Does he stick around? I think I'd love to see Colorado have some stability on the defense line. Now, obviously, Warren Sapp is still there, so that's cool. But you had Sinceri there. Then you had Lewis this past year. Then you have obviously him. And so it's like, okay, can we get some continuity here? Does he want to stick around? I guess we'll have to wait and see. We'll have to wait and find out. But I like where Deion Sanders' head is at here, because, again, hire someone who can sell what you're talking about, right? And Deion Sanders sells to his players. Our staff has all been in the pros, and we can help you get there. And I think bringing in a guy who's almost a 15-year vet, I think that sort of, in a way, kind of proves this point, right? When we come back, Mel Kiper Jr. is saying that NFL teams do not want Shedeur Sanders because of one certain thing, and I just don't think that makes sense. This episode of Locked On Buffs is brought to you by our sponsors over at Roy. Attention, Locked On Buffs fans. The future of college sports is here, and it's transparent. Let me tell you. Before the Roy app, NIL negotiations often happened under the table, and fans didn't have a clear way to directly support the athletes they love. Now, with Roy, you could be a part of the change and support Colorado athletes in the most transparent way possible. The Roy app, the NIL app, that is, allows you to choose the player you want to support, decide how much to contribute, receive exclusive content from the athletes you back. The best part, if your players transfer, you get your money back. It's a risk-free way to show your support. The Roy app is giving fans control, no more uncertainty. Now you can provide transparent, impactful support and help them shape the team and the future of college sports with your contributions. Download the Roy app now from the App Store and start backing Colorado athletes the way they deserve, with transparency, trust, and real impact. This is the future of college sports. Join it now by downloading Roy and supporting your favorite players. Welcome back to Locked On Buffs. Appreciate you guys for tuning in every single day, making me your first listen of the day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast, so make sure to like, subscribe, and follow so you don't miss out on a moment of our fun coverage. We're almost at 7,000 subscribers. Share this with a friend, comment, like, get this up so we can get to 7,000 subs, that is. Let's talk about it. Mel Kiper Jr. on his show talked about the upcoming NFL draft, obviously, and there's sort of this notion around the NFL right now that this quarterback class that is inherently weak, right? Last year was a historical class. You had 6 guys go in the first round, and I think all of them went in the top 20, if I'm not mistaken. So pretty big deal, or at least I'm pretty sure they all did. I could be wrong on that. We'll say they all won the first 32 picks. I know that for sure. But the 6 first-round picks, I think that it for sure tied the record for most all time. And then you go to a class like this, and it's getting comparisons to that Malik Willis class, where it's like, oh, that class was literally terrible, and they're all a bunch of backups. So Mel Kiper on his show, First Draft with Field Yates, was talking about what he's been told by NFL personnel. And I'll read you guys what he said, and then I'll dive into it and give you my stance on it. He said, made some calls yesterday, Field. Cam Ward seems to be the consensus guy, quote. Shedeur Sanders, not really what we're looking for. This is Mel Kiper speaking on what he was told. The NFL's not really looking for that kind of quarterback now. And so the huge thing, or the huge knock on Shedeur Sanders, at least from what Kiper said, was that Shedeur Sanders is not a true dual threat quarterback. That was a tongue twister. He's not a guy who will burn you with his legs and just pick up 20 yards. He's not a Josh Allen. He's not Lamar. He's not even Patrick Mahomes, who sort of scrambles around and I guess is always making plays and hard to bring down, right? Shedeur Sanders has been sacked quite a bit in his college career. In fact, if I pull up the numbers now, I would say he probably has been sacked nearly 100 times, if I'm not mistaken. Let's do the math. Sacked 35 plus 23 plus 52. Let's do the math. We'll do the math out loud. 35 plus 23 plus 52, 110 times. Plus this year, 42 times. So he's been sacked 152 times across his 4-year career. And obviously, I've seen his speed. The one game that stands out to me was the USC game, 2023. Rush for a touchdown there. And then at Jackson State, he seemed to run a little bit more. I think there was part of the way he played was because his father told him not to run because they couldn't afford to lose him. And I have seen Coach Prime tell him that before. Like I have seen clips of that. So I think that's part of it, right? Shedeur Sanders can't get hurt. Otherwise, the team is down their best player. But he has been sacked over 100 times, including 94 times in 2 years in Colorado. So he doesn't really show a lot of dual threat ability. At least on film the past couple of years. He shows the ability to keep the play alive, which I think is a nice trait. But Mel Kiper was saying that because he's not a guy who's going to run around, give you 50 yards a game, he's not a Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen type where it's like you could count on him to get a first down with his legs, right? No, he's Shedeur Sanders will pick up first downs with his legs if it's a short yard situation, or at least that's what we've seen, right? I mean, he could always get to the NFL and all of a sudden start taking off more and getting yards rather than taking sacks, and that could change everything. But I don't think this is something to be afraid of, right? I think Shedeur Sanders is athletic enough, right? It's not. I think I'd be more concerned with Shedeur if he wasn't athletic. Shedeur is athletic and can run. I wouldn't say he's not a burner, right? He's not a Kyler Murray type guy where he's just going to take off and you'd be like, damn, he's quick, but he's athletic, right? I think the comparison that I've seen that made sense was Joe Burrow, right? Where it's like, Joe Burrow is not a freak athlete by any means, but he can make some plays with his legs. Shedeur Sanders may have to rely on his legs a little bit more at the next level. And that wouldn't shock me, right? You don't want to be taking 40 sacks in the NFL because that's a recipe for disaster. We'll just put it that way. It's also one of those things where the NFL is so dependent on quarterbacks being athletic nowadays. I think it's almost like the roles have reversed. So back in the day, it was like if your quarterback was a scrambler in college, if he was a dual threat quarterback in college, it was, oh my gosh, this guy's not a pocket passer. Now it's like flipped. It's like, okay, this guy's a pocket passer. He's a thing of the past, right? We don't want Joe Flacco's, Matt Ryan, Peyton Manning. I mean, we always want Peyton Manning, but you know what I mean? Where it's like these guys who aren't athletic, aren't running around. And realistically, my take on this whole situation is, one, all it takes is for one team to love you. So Shedeur Sanders is beloved by the Giants, the Raiders, the Browns, whoever it is. They love him. They'll figure out a way to make it work, right? They've had immobile quarterbacks in the NFL before, and I would not classify Shedeur as immobile. Two, Shedeur Sanders does have some athleticism to him. I just don't think he used it as much as he could have at Colorado. I think it could have been more of a weapon if he wanted it to be, but I also don't really know the instructions he was getting from his coach, aka his father. Maybe they told him not to run, right? I know there are certain head coaches who don't love their quarterbacks scrambling all the time because that makes them susceptible to injury, and you don't want to be susceptible to injury. That's the last thing you want from your quarterback, especially in the NFL when it's a franchise guy and you're paying them a lot of money. You want him to be healthy. You want to be on the field. So I don't think it's going to be a big deal. I still think that Kuiper also said that the consensus is that Cam Ward is a QB1 in this class. So I don't really know what the Titans are going to do at 1. I don't know if I don't view Cam Ward as a generational talent. But I could be wrong, but I guess we'll have to wait and find out. Come back in 5 years and we'll see if I'm correct. But I do think that Shedeur is probably the lowest he goes as 6 to the Raiders, right? I don't think he's going to fall very far if there is a little bit of a twist at the beginning of the draft where they go Abdul Carter, Travis Hunter, whoever it is. But that's my take on it. You guys comment below. If you were an NFL team, would you be worried about Shedeur Sanders' ability to run the football at the next level? Because quite frankly, I'm not, right? I think he has proven with his accuracy, his arm. I think he has good enough arm talent. I won't say he has the best arm. Good arm talent. He's accurate. He's smart. Good leader. Marketable. I think he has all the makings of a franchise quarterback. So the fact that he's not a barn burner like Lamar, Josh Allen, or whoever, is that really the end of the world? I don't think so. Welcome back to Locked On Buffs. I appreciate you guys for tuning in every single day, making me your first listen of the day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast, so make sure to like, subscribe, and follow, so that way you don't miss out on a moment of the coverage. Let's talk about it. The Colorado Buffaloes, they have a little bit of an not odd quarterback situation. They have an interesting quarterback situation because you have Shedeur Sanders. So I think everyone knew Shedeur was going to be the quarterback as soon as Deion Sanders took the head coaching job at Jackson State. And everybody knew he was going to be the quarterback at Colorado, right? There was never a doubt that he was going to follow his father, and there was never a doubt that he wasn't going to be the starting quarterback. Now, if you want to say there were doubts about him being one of the best players in the country, sure, we could say that, because I think a lot of people had doubts. I didn't think he had. I won't say I didn't think he had it in him, but I didn't know Shedeur Sanders was going to be as great as he was. Right? I think Shedeur Sanders walked away from Colorado a legend of the program. I think he walked away from Colorado. I mean, this past season, completed 74% of his passes, 6th best season all time in terms of completion percentage, Big 12 Offensive Player of the Year, Golden Arm Award. He did a bit of everything. So replacing that's not easy. So you go out, you get Julian Lewis, a 5-star. You also bring in Caden Salter, who's one of the more experienced transfers, or one of the more experienced players in the transfer portal from Liberty, dual threat guy. I really like him, see what they'll do with him. But what do they do after that, right? You have to have a contingency plan for your contingency plan, and then even a contingency plan for your contingency plan, right? You can't just count on those two guys. Because at the end of the day, you never know. Does Caden Salter win the starting job and then Julian Lewis gets mad and leaves? Or does Julian Lewis get offered $10 million to transfer somewhere else and leaves? We never know. But let's talk about it. The Colorado Buffaloes are getting an official visit from 4-star quarterback in the 2026 class, another Georgia guy. His name is Brody McWhorter from Cartersville, Georgia, goes to Cass High School, ranks as the 360th player in the country, 24th quarterback, 43rd player in the state of Georgia, and he's scheduling some official visits, and Colorado is on the receiving end of one of those. He announced his top 7. Colorado was included in that list. I imagine that they'll get a visit. This is what he had to say to On3. Auburn, Indiana, Colorado, Mississippi State, Syracuse, Wisconsin, and West Virginia are my top 7 schools. These schools made the list because they have all answered, shown the big 3 things I look for in a school. Relationship, development, and schematic fits are things I'm looking for. They make sure I know that I'm a priority for them too. He's 6'2", 210 pounds. He's visiting West Virginia on April 4th. He's visiting Colorado on June 15th. Mississippi State the following next few days on June 20th. So he's still figuring out some of the other visits, but Colorado's getting him in for a visit, which is a pretty big deal. If you're Colorado, this is the kind of guy that you could help build your program around, right? You have Julian Lewis for the meantime, but you need guys behind him, and this could be the perfect guy for that. A little bit about him. Like I said, 6'2", 205 is what they have him listed as on 24/7. The story had him at 215, I think it was. He has nearly 40 offers, so clearly he's in high demand. He's a guy that plays in, I think, and this isn't a hot take by any means, but I feel like there's just certain states where it's like you play there and your competition is just naturally better. California is one of them, Florida, Georgia, Texas, where they kind of are a step above these other places. His stats aren't available online, that's depressing. But he's a guy who, based on his film, because he has a little huddle profile, he can do a bit of everything. And I think that's what Colorado needs. And so we'll see how heavily they go after him. I think the hard part about Colorado moving forward when it comes to the quarterback position is how do they build around Caden Salter or Julian Lewis, right? Is that attract other quarterbacks or does that deter them? And after Julian Lewis is done, do they go after more transfers, right? Are they going to be a program that just plugs and plays a transfer every offseason, or are they going to be a program that brings in freshmen or high school recruits to build around them? So we'll just have to wait and see. But I do think it doesn't hurt to bring in as many talented players as possible. So let me know what you guys think about him. Is he worth pursuing? Is he not? I guess we'll just have to wait and see. But this has been another episode of Locked On Buffs.